Welcome everybody, this is SharePoint Patterns and Practices webcast, and this time we're going to talk about one of the samples which we have available for SharePoint Framework, written by Ilya Struff. And sorry Ilya, I can't pronounce your name properly, but that's fine as well. So my name is Vesa Juvonen, I'm a Senior Program Manager from SharePoint Engineering, and today Ilya is going to lead the presentation. I'm going to interrupt Ilya every now and then within the slides and within the demo section. And like mentioned, we're going to have a look on one of the samples which are available from the GitHub for you to learn how to do SharePoint Framework development. Ilya, will you do the introduction?
So yes, I'm Ilya Struff. I'm a SharePoint consultant from Belgium. I'm also an MVP and working for Ventigrate. So I will do this SharePoint Framework search demo I created a couple of weeks ago.
Excellent, thank you, Ilya. So before we go to the actual content of the presentation or a webcast, just a quick intro on SharePoint Patterns and Practices. SharePoint Patterns and Practices is owned by the SharePoint Engineering, but we work together with community like MVPs and other people from the community who are contributing and helping us with the samples and reusable components. The PnP provides code samples, guidance documentations in MSDN, multiple community calls, case studies, and the themes are in the SharePoint Framework, SharePoint Adding Model, which is fully supported and will be in the future as well, and also Microsoft Graph and Office 365 APIs. AKMS SP PnP or SharePoint PnP is the address, and you'll land to the one-pager which has a lot of information around the SharePoint PnP. Good location to, whenever you're trying to implement something, I would recommend to go there and have a look if there's any reusable stuff for you to consume. But let's actually move into the actual content of the presentation, and Ilya is going to take the lead. And I'm going to then interrupt Ilya as we go along. But Ilya, take it away.
So here you have a quick glance of what the search report is. So here you see just a carousel template. The report itself is based on what we have available right now with the content search report. So you have this kind of functionality with display templates. In this report, you have a similar experience with the usage of templates. So if you want a carousel, you can have it, but you can also have a table layout. All this is done via configuration options you have available inside your report. So you have a search settings option, you have a template setting option, and a logging pane. Now, the most important one will be your search query settings, where you can define your query of the documents or the images you want to retrieve, the number of results you want to render, and the sorting of your results. Besides that, you have the template settings. In the template settings, you have two things to put in mind. You have an external template or an internal template. You will see that during the code demo. Internal templates are templates that are created within the SharePoint Framework project itself, and external templates, as you can see on the top, it's a link to an external file which can be loaded from your CDN. In this case, it is SharePoint itself. And on the right side, you have a logging pane. And that logging pane shows you the API calls to search that are getting made. So if you do a typo and there's something wrong, then you can see in the logging pane what has been gone wrong. So this gives you a good overview of what's happening.
That's actually a nice feature within the web part, because then you're able to figure out, even though it's placed on the production, you're able to figure out if something goes wrong. That's a clever thing to do.
Yes, indeed. So the web part itself is built with React. So as every SharePoint Framework application is built on top of React, this web part is based on the React template itself. And it's also using Flux. Flux is a pattern from Facebook. I will go through it in the next slides. And the web part, as I already mentioned, has the availability of templates, internal and external. So you also have API logging. And for the external templates, I will also show you a template builder I created, so to quickly create your own templates and to include them in your project. Now, to understand how the web part works, you need to understand a bit how Flux works. So Flux is a pattern, it's not a framework. It's created by Facebook, and it's based for utilizing unidirectional data flow. So what is this? Everything is based on an action, and an action sends a call to a dispatcher. That dispatcher will see which available stores are available. Now, a store is something where you can retrieve data or you can put data, and you can have multiple stores. So a dispatcher will dispatch its action to all the stores available. And when a store sees, oh, I have an action and it's for me, then it will do its action that it has to do. Once it's finished, it will push or emit a change to the view model. So to show you, I created the new visualization of how it works with the search component itself. So first things first, it starts with the search component. The search component will load on a page, and then it will trigger a get search results action. So it will send the action to the dispatcher. The dispatcher itself will go to the search store. Hey, give me all the search results for that for the current query. As you can see, the search store calls the search API. Once it's retrieved, then the search store will say, okay, now it's time to render the results. Every time you do a change in the web part itself, it will emit a new action called the change settings action. It will also go to the dispatcher, and so on and so on and so on. So now we can dive into the demo itself. So hopefully you can see my screen. So this is just a workbench page on SharePoint with the search web part loaded. So if we are going to open up the web part, and you can see the search query settings. You see the search query is just based on docx, but I can change this to retrieve me all the documents from the current site, and you're going to retrieve only the docx files. Then I can say how many documents. I want to show 15 documents. Do you want to have sorting in place? Yes, I want sorting in place. Once this is done, you can click on apply, and you will see that 15 results are rendered.
Quick comment, Ilya, on that one. So you've decided to use the non-reactive property pane, obviously, because there's so many things to configure. It doesn't make any sense for the web part itself to reflect those changes immediately, and that's why we see the apply button in the UI.
Correct, indeed. Otherwise, there were a lot of changes going on.
Yeah.
So that's why I turned it off. So then you have the template settings. This is just a default template, but I also have an internal table template, as you already saw during the presentation. So you can quickly change that. Once you click on the apply, it will also change the output. We can also add a title above it, table layout, instance apply, and now you see the table layout on top of it. External templates, I will discuss this during later time during the demo. And here you see the logging pane. Now, once we open the query settings again, and we do a typo inside the sorting, so let's add some TT, you will see there are no results at the moment. And if you go to the logging, here you see the full URL of the API call that has been made. And you also see the response. And in the response, you'll see this. And here you can see invalid parameter sort list. So now you know, okay, there's something wrong with my sorting. So if we change this, we apply, everything is back to normal. So that's quite an easy way to check what's going on. So you don't need to open up your web developer tools to check which calls have been made. So you only see that one call for your search API for the web part itself. So that's, in my perspective, a real benefit for the web part.
Yeah, that's a really clever way of handling that. Well, especially in the complex web parts, to have that kind of a way to understand when something goes wrong. That's a really nice implementation.
So let's dive into the code itself. So the code itself, as you've probably seen, search or React web part, it all starts with the web part itself, which loads a component file. In my case, this is a component file. And in this component file, there are two real important things, and that's the actions and the store. So my component is aware of which actions it can execute and also of the store which is available. So let's first go to the action list. So it's under Flux actions and then search actions. I only defined one action, and that's only give me the new set of results. And it retrieves the query string, the maximum items to retrieve, the sorting options, and also the fields you want to show inside your template. So what happens when your component gets loaded? It will initialize that search action. You will see it over here, get. So it gives me a set of results. Now, we have a dispatcher. A dispatcher in Flux is nothing more than just this, but it retrieves the action call, and then it dispatches it to the available stores. As in my component, I only defined one search store, so this is my search store. So this is a search store itself, and if you know how Flux works, Flux has a dependency on the switch, which checks the action type. Now, every action type needs to be defined in this, inside your store. So in this case, it's my search get action. So if it sees the search get action, then it will execute all what's inside that switch statement or that case statement. So in this case, it will retrieve the URL, or it will build up the URL for the search call that has been or should be made. So this is all what has been needed. So it will retrieve the query options, the fields it needs to be retrieving, the amount of results, and the sorting options. Once you have your URL available, then you can make the call to your search API. So you see get search data. It's nothing more than calling the HTTP client, which is available in the search framework itself. So it will do a get action for the URL you just built. And once that's done, you will return the JSON of it. So that's the JSON object. And here you will see that now you do the logging to your web part, and you do some checks if you have the available data for your search call. So here, this is the most important one. Are there any rows inside your JSON object? If that's true, then we have a right object. We set the search results object in our store. So every time there's a new component, it can retrieve all the data from that object itself, so it doesn't need to necessarily do a call to the API again and again and again, so it's caching the data. And once that is done, my search store does something special, which is emitting a change. So this tells my component that my store has done its work and that it's time to re-render my component itself. So if we now go back to my component, there are two things you need to be aware of, is the component did mount and the component will unmount. In these two functionalities, you have a search store at change listener and a remove change listener. So here you will add an event handler that waits for the emit change in the search store itself. So once it sees the emit change, then it knows, okay, now I need to re-render my component on the page. So when you don't need the component anymore, or you're loading another component, then it will it will trigger, the component will unmount, and then you can remove the event listener, so as you don't need it anymore. That's
pretty much that's pretty much the flow with Flux, no doubt. Can you, just out of curiosity, can you actually show where the data is stored, or how the data is stored within the store, and how do we then get the data from store as well? You do have the get search results from search store in the web port in this component.
Yeah.
That's how you actually get the results away, and how do we actually save them in a store?
Yeah. So here I have another function. In that function, I do some optimization of my object itself. I don't need to have all the data available from the JSON object. I'm only interested in the fields. So here I create my new object with only the fields I'm interested in. So, and this is stored in the search store in a variable called underscore, or in an object called underscore results.
Yeah.
So how it's retrieved? That's retrieved inside the components. So inside your components, once there is a change going on, you have an Unchanged Callback function that needs to be called. So if you're going to take a look at this, you will have a set state, and in this set state, you will retrieve the result. So in the beginning of your component loading, the state will be empty. So it's an empty object. And now you will load your results from the store itself. So there's a function in the store, get search results. So if we go and take a look at that, it's nothing more than returning that object, what was just created in the set search results functionality. So quick and easy. The only thing is you need to know how Flux works before you can start implementing that.
Yeah, and that will, whenever we set the state, that will then fire the render method for actually outputting the information.
Correct.
Yeah. So this is actually a great example also from a Flux pattern perspective. So how to actually take advantage of Flux and what does it actually mean? And in this case, yes, there's only one action, but there could be tens and tens of actions if you do have a let's say complex UI. But this is a great kind of a stepping stone. Oh, this is how it works. A simple example on the Flux usage as well.
Correct. So then we can quickly dive into the external templates. So as you can see in my render, I have two renders available. So I have an external template and an internal template rendering. So as I defined, an internal template is a template you create inside your SharePoint Framework project itself. So here you have a template folder, which has two templates, as you already saw, the default template and the table template layouts. So these are available by default. So if you're loading the web art and you go to your template settings, you will see the table and default. Now, for an external template, I wanted to load it from an external location. So to be able to load it from an external location, the template itself needs to be in an exact order or in an exact template pattern, which I defined as looking like this. So you have a function called external template, which contains a couple of properties. These properties are a key value text of the name of your template. The mapping properties, which fields you want to retrieve for rendering inside your template, which scripts you want to get loading before you start using your template, and which styles you want to load before using your template. So in this case, this is a carousel template, so I wanted to have some CSS to be loaded for rendering my carousel layout. And I also need to have jQuery loaded and a library called cycle2, which has a dependency on jQuery. And if we are going back to our site, I already added it to my site. So here I have just a document library with my template. So let me get that link to the file. If we are going back to the table layout, first let's do a query to retrieve only images. We can remove this. If we are applying this, now we should only retrieve images, and that's correct. Now we can go to the template settings and we can turn on external template loading. And as you can see, now a text box becomes available. So we can enter the URL to that template. And once I click on apply, my carousel template is getting loaded. So this is loaded from that URL. So this is the output of my JavaScript template. And this is here. So if you don't believe me, let's do a quick change. So I want to add some paging underneath it. So let's add some paging underneath the carousel template. Let's add this to my slides. So once this is done, behind the scenes, there's a job running. And I hope that this is going to open. Let me put it on this screen. So this is a gulp watch function, and it's checking which files has been changed. And once a file change has been seen, then it's going to upload my file back to SharePoint. So it's a little bit similar how SharePoint Framework pushes everything to a CDN. So if we're going to load that again, now we have our custom pager at the bottom available, and also our data that we are added. So if we now reload the page, hopefully it will work. So, and now we have some paging underneath the images. So this is just a quick example of how you can work with external templates in combination with the search web art.
Yeah, that's a great pattern as well. And obviously there will be a native, by the way, a native SharePoint search web part in the modern team sites as well. But the whole point of this sample, what Elio has done, is to show these individual technical samples and technical approaches. And this is a great sample demonstrating multiple different scenarios, which is superb.
So I don't have anything to show you. So if you're interested, Vesa, I can show you other things.
Just out of curiosity, actually, now that before we close up, can you actually show how did you switch the drop down to a text box in the editor pane? So that
no
behavior.
Problem.
Because there was that's not a native thing to happening as well.
No, indeed, it didn't. So if we're going back to the main file, so in my case this is a search SPFX web art file. Inside the property pane settings, I created a statement to check if my external template property is turned on or not. So by default, I'm going to show you a property drop-down pane, and if my property external template is turned on, so it's true, then I'm going to switch the template property to a text field. And I'm only going to add this text field to the template group. So this is the template group. So here I add the template property. So in case of, or by default, it will load the dropdown. And in case of when you turn it on, it will show you the text field instead of the dropdown. So that's how I switched it. So quite simple to do.
Yeah, quite simple because the framework is obviously providing you some of these controls and behaviors, but it's a great, well, it's another great sample included in this one, or a pattern included in this one. So great web part overall.
Thanks.
Good. I think that's it from a demo perspective. So let's switch for the slides and close up the webcast then. But yeah, so like mentioned on the search web part itself, so obviously there will be a native out-of-the-box search web part, and there is already in the modern team sites. But this is really around showing individual capabilities, like how do we build React and using a Flux, and also a few other scenarios there, like the external templates and also the editor pane options. It's a great web part to actually pull down from the samples and have a closer look on, hey, this is how I'm able to implement my customizations to SharePoint Framework as well. Anything you want to kind of add on there, Elio?
No, not on my side. I learned a lot from it when I was building it, so I implemented quite a couple of things to touch all the endpoints and all the functionalities that are available inside the SharePoint framework. So if you're interested, check out the web part itself and see what we can do with SharePoint framework itself.
Cool. But I think that's it then. So thank you, Ilya, for this one. Great sample, great web part, and we'll come up with a new webcast sooner or later. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.